Remi.
Did I, okay, here's the view.
There's video.
Is it working?
It's working. I can see you. Oh, now it's not.
Okay, yeah.
There you are. Greetings. Hey, what I thought is, if it's with your permission, I've set my little camera up on the side, and I thought maybe it'd be worth recording this as something that could be of value to other people, you know, just to sort of get an idea of what happens if they buy, you know, like a premium, like 6 or 7 story pole, you know, and then they have to try and work out what to do. And then certainly I'm going to continue to offer this half-hour one-on-one, but I thought it'd be an interesting recording, yeah?
Yeah.
Is that okay? So my camera's just set off to the side here.
Okay.
Sweet. Look at that. Beautiful. Alright, so let's hit this. So you have got a Pro-7, just to sort of set the frame, and what I'm going to do is just go through with you the nuances of cleaning from 4 stories up to 5, 6, and 7, and what changes and how to use the tools to make that, you know, more efficient, more effective. Yeah. Sweet. Okay, so tell me about what you've done so far, because I saw that you've been out with the pole, so you've had a go, right?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the season is kind of starting late to the year, so I haven't done much. I've done commercial bowling about. It's about 25 feet, something, 25 feet.
Yep.
So that's my main thing that I did. Last year I did with homemade products, so with some of the things was more easy. But this one I have like 50-foot ground level windows that I'm doing often. So that's where I've tried it the most.
Right. Okay, and you know that we would normally, if somebody said I'm not going to go over 50 feet, like 50, then we would normally say, hey, jump onto the, jump onto the Mini. But as soon as you're going to go over 50 feet, then the Pro is the answer. But one of the things that I'll recommend you strongly is to take the bottom sections off the Pro, so it comes apart 11 feet at a time. So if you're doing 3 stories or 2 stories, then don't lug around this, bigger pole when you don't need to, yeah?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing actually.
Oh, great. Okay, so you're enjoying that. That's good. All right, so let me walk you through what happens as we go higher, right? So I know we've had a couple of chats, but I'll start from the beginning and then go through the science of, and I'll make sure that you get a link to this recording as well, so you'll be able to go through it, so you don't have to take any notes or anything.
Okay. Oh, good.
So we've got 2 poles. We've got a Reach It Pro and a Pro-CISION. Can you remind me which one you got?
Pro-CISION.
Okay, so you got Pro-CISION. So Pro-CISION is 100% ultra high modulus carbon fiber, so it's more rigid. Like when we do the flex test, you know how we do the 3-point flex test?
Mm-hmm.
So when we do the flex test, like the difference is really significant for the Pro-CISION. And the reason is that we want to reduce the amount of flex in the pole, in all of its situations, because the higher you go, the more, well, there's a number of things that affect it, but actually we're trying to compete against gravity. So, the analogy that I give is that when you see a rock climber, climbing up a crevasse, then he can just put his feet out sideways and get grip, because his body mass is being pulled by gravity directly down. But actually, the effect of force is at 90 degrees to the force. So another example, because this is really important. Once you get this in the world of physics, I learned it from an American philosopher, Buckminster Fuller. He sort of spent a lot of time teaching this, and then it gets applied to human psychology as well, actually, which is kind of weird, but that's another story. Maybe I'll go there. So here's the thing. If you've got, let me just try and make an example. If this is the Earth, right, and this is the Moon, right, then the Moon, the line of gravity is actually in this direction here, yeah? So And yet, in order to avoid gravity, the moon travels in that direction there. So the moon is always traveling at 90 degrees to gravity in order to avoid gravity.
Okay.
Right? So it's kind of weird. So when the rock climber is in a crevasse, gravity is pulling this way, but his feet are going that way and being pushed against the walls of the crevasse. Yeah. Otherwise, he'd just drop straight down. There's no way he could get enough grip on the walls. So you go, how can a guy grip the walls and climb up a crevasse with his Adidas or Nike climbing boots? You know, like they're not doing it, right? Or his 5 fingers, or his 5 toes, or whatever they are, right? So once you get this, you start to understand the physics of what's happening when, you know, with a pole, and especially as the pole gets longer, and then the end effect is that you're then a professional. You can then change your location in relation to the pole, the glass, and everything else like that, and get the result that you want from the pole. Yeah.
Okay.
Human psychology: the guy that chases money never gets it, as a rule. There's always that guy who ends up on YouTube who does, but as a rule, the law is, you know, you should chase what you're passionate about and allow money to come to you, because money comes at right angles, right? So whatever you chase goes away from you. If you're doing what you're passionate, it allows money to come to you. So you can get rich by doing what you're passionate about more easily than you can get rich by just wanting to be rich. All right, so how does this apply to water-fed window cleaning? And the answer is that if I use this pen on the screen here and say when we are directly underneath the pole and we've got it directly vertical, then the effect of gravity is only on that pole, and it becomes fairly much lighter compared to if we wanted to hold the pole at 90 degrees, like parallel to the earth, and we tried to manage that pole. Then you can feel the effect of gravity, and you know, the longer the pole is, the less likely it is that you could actually hold it. But a mini you can hold horizontally, but you can feel the difference, yeah? And so we know that that's not the weight of the pole, that's actually the effect of gravity. Now, when we go up against a window, we're going to say the further away from the building we go, the more we're going to have the effect of gravity on the pole. And to use it to our advantage, it's actually, the pole is here, the gravity is pulling down, and the bottom of the pole is pushing against you, and the top of the pole, the brush, is pushing against the glass. So if you tried to clean windows with your pole at 90 degrees, you've got no pressure of the bristles against the glass. The further out you come, the more the feet of the guy climbing a crevasse, like metaphor, the more the pole is pushing against you, and the more the pole is pushing against the glass, splaying the bristles, allowing for agitation to work. Yeah? So that's your maths. And then the further away you go, as what when you put that first photo up or video up to me, then the further away you go, you can see the more pressure on the pole to flex. Yeah? And that's just gravity just pulling down on it. So if you want to reduce the flex, one step to reduce the flex is get yourself closer to the building. The reason we move further away from the building is to save our necks, especially like those of us over 40, that we actually have a lot more intuition, shall we say, to say, I need to look after my neck. So we tend to move further away, so we're not craning our neck so much, but then obviously we're going to induce more flex in the pole as a result of that. So there's an ideal place, and the answer to that is prisms, wearing the 90-degree glasses, so that even though they will, for probably 50% of people, feel nauseous for the first hour or two as they get used to it, but on the other end, the brain does adjust. It's basically a control thing, it's saying, hang on, I'm looking straight ahead, I'm not seeing straight ahead, something's wrong. So it induces vertigo, nausea, dizziness. And when I'm doing my talk, when I did the talk around America, in psychology terms, the same thing's happening for the guy who, when his wife is driving the car, down the mountain, he feels nauseous. He tells her to get out because she can't drive properly. He gets behind the driver's wheel and he drives down the same mountain and he doesn't have any nausea, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually, when he's in the passenger seat, he's not seeing the road from the way he's used to seeing it. The car's not doing what he thinks it should do, so he's out of control, so his brain induces vertigo and nausea, right? It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some guys can just put the prisms on and they work perfectly first time. Other guys don't, right? So you just got to ride your way through if you're the other guy. So step one, wear prisms when you're working high, because it does mean that you can work closer to the building without having that intuition that you should get away from the building, right? For your body's sake. The second thing is to understand in physics that what is the transfer of effort. You're on the ground, right? So I'm trying to move this down here. You're on the ground. This is up on the windows, and if you don't move, the brush won't move, right? And so when you move, you're actually, in order to get to a certain point, you're accelerating, right? So I give the example, if you're driving your car to the end of the street and back, then you accelerate, and then you still need force, but to maintain a constant speed down to the end of the road, you've still got the accelerator on, so you're still applying force, but it's not acceleration. Then you have to decelerate and stop, and if you have to come back, then you've got to accelerate, maintain speed, and then decelerate and stop. And that would be a single cycle. So the point about what causes flex in a pole is actually the acceleration, right? And what's weird about working at extreme heights is that you're accelerating in this direction, along the ground, because you can't, lift the pole. Like on 2-story work, you can just use your arms and you're up, down with your arms. Once you get up to 6 and 7 stories, you can't do that anymore. So you're going to walk the pole, yeah? So you're doing, I mean, obviously if we've got strong arms, we're going to use our arms by habit, but actually the real story is we're walking the pole like that. And so we're doing our work in the horizontal plane, and we're expecting the brush to do its work in the vertical plane. So we're forcing effort to go through a 90-degree curve, and it's the acceleration that causes the pole to flex. Once you're in a constant movement, and the acceleration is being transferred to the pole, then you're actually going to just, during those long strokes, the pole won't be flexing. It's only for acceleration. So the higher you go, the slower you accelerate. So you give the pole, like if we're just doing 2-story work, we're chop, 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 But when you're at 7 stories, then just go slowly and allow that, and forgive its process from trying to take your effort in the horizontal plane and realize that you're asking it to be converted to effort in the vertical plane, right? So it's from X to Y, right? And so, and that's why you charge more, like quite comfortably. You can charge more for 6 and 7 stories, because you are going to work a little bit slower. You're going to be a little bit more careful. You have got more things to take into consideration, like wind and coverage and stuff like that. So it's no big deal. But the key is that if you see the pole flexing, then just slow down the acceleration. Once you've got it moving, it's not going to flex any more than that, right? So then you go, okay, I got it. It's only when I put the thrust in, that's what's going to push the pole to flex. So, and obviously, the higher you go, the heavier the pole is by the nature that it's more material, and therefore the more of the effect of gravity is on the pole. The further away from the building you go, the more the effect of gravity on the pole. So it's got the natural flex from gravity. So the prime spot is to be, in your, 70 to 80 degree, maybe 70 degree, mark, sort of that standard angle that you imagine, and trying to get yourself and set the pole up so that it works at that. And the irony is that the relationship of you to the glass changes from 3 stories to 4 stories to 5 stories to 6 stories, because the higher you are there, that angle, by nature of that line, hang on, let me see, I might just pull that curtain actually. That may stop that. There you go, that's going to make it easier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So, if the pole was only this long, then the displacement would be this, and the pole is this long, then the displacement is that. So you're getting further away from the building just to maintain that angle anyway. Yeah? So, are you following me? Am I too scientific?
Yeah. No, that's good.
Okay.
That's good.
It's amazing, but isn't it? Like there's nobody out there. You know, guys have got an intuition, and when I was window cleaning, you have to work the stuff out for yourself. But to be able to get it just, you know, downloaded, and then you can just go and apply it. You know, it's pretty handy.
Yeah.
So the longer the pole, the further away you actually are from the glass. Therefore, the more gravity will affect the pole. Not only that it weighs more, but also that you're further away, so you're getting that splay like that. So in order to reduce the flex, we slow down the acceleration, and you just realize that if we're way down here, you know, we've got to wait for that effort that you put in, you know, to get to the top. Yeah? So when you're doing two-story work, it's an instant transfer. You're going up, down, the brush is going up, down, the pole is rigid, you've immediately transferred your effort. Yeah? There's no delay. As soon as there's any flex in the pole, then there's a delay, and you just got to appreciate, and then the key is to try and get as much of that work as possible, and then map it, you know, with your brain and say, I know what I'm looking for now. I'm going to map it so that I can just develop new habits. When I'm at 5 stories, I work like this. When I'm at 6 stories, I work like this. And when I'm at 7 stories, I work like this. And each story is different. Yeah. If you get that, then you're going to be immediately effective and safe. Yeah. So so slow down acceleration, and then because the pole won't flex during constant movement, right? So if you're just driving down the street, you've accelerated to your 20 miles an hour, and then you're just going to drive down the street at 20 miles an hour. That's all easy. But if you take your foot off the accelerator, you won't be doing 20 miles an hour. So it's the same on the brush. Once you've got the brush moving, then you're looking for a constant, you know, sort of effort, you know. And once you've got that constant effort, the efficiency is actually from doing full-length strokes. You know, if you do little tiny strokes, you know, certainly the longer the pole is, if you just do a little stroke like that, by the time you're coming down and doing up, it hasn't even reached the brush. It's at 75 feet. Yeah. So you want to. It encourages you just to do full-length strokes. You know, nice and slow. You're not nice and crazy slow. You know, we're not talking snail slow, but just you'll calibrate it, right? But you know, okay, the pole is flexing. It's not doing that. I can lose less effort in flex if I move slower. So therefore, I can be more efficient. Yeah. Because what is flex? If you got a piece of wire and you bend it, like the young guys don't do this anymore unless they're on the farm. But you know, we used to have to change our own fuses, didn't we? Yeah. So you'd bend the wire and break it, or you'd fix a fence. I don't know. I'm off the land, so you know we have to have number 8 gauge wire and you know bend it and tie something up. You know. So and you can feel the effect of that bending. Not only does the metal get soft, but also it gets hot. Right, and that's the best way for you to understand that you're working. Work is measured as the definition of work is force through distance. So you apply force through a distance, and then that is measured as work. Work is measured in calories. Food is measured in calories, right? And heat is measured in calories, right? So when you flex a pole, you put a big amount of effort in. You use, you know, the Krebs cycle converted your sugars into energy. You used your energy with the combustion of your muscle. You sent that energy up the pole, right? It flexes. That's your calories being lost, but the surface area of the pole is so great that you can't feel it, and that's so it gets lost in heat, and less of it gets to the brush.
So it takes you more energy to be able to clean the same window.
You got it. Yeah. And it can get incredibly frustrating if you think you can use lots of little short strokes. Yeah?
Yeah.
And the whole idea is to reduce the number of cycles on yourself anyway, because once it's in constant motion, it's not taxing your body as much. Yeah? It takes more fuel to accelerate. It takes more electricity to turn your phone on than it does to keep your phone on. Yeah? Kind of thing. Yeah? So what, you know, you just say, look, it's slow, put some music on, slow and steady, wins the race. You know, it's the hare and the tortoise. stuff.
So I need to find the right music to.
Yeah, that's it. Just some the three tenors or something like that. So and then the other thing I wanted to talk with you about is matching the brush and matching the gooseneck. Yeah. So the brush, if you think about the stiletto effect, the stiletto is a very fine point heel, and put it into a timber floor, and the 100-pound mass of a woman can leave a dent in a timber floor, but put her in flats, she's just got her little Nikes on, she ain't gonna make a mark on your belly, just ain't gonna mark, not leave a mark anywhere. So the same principle about saying what's the surface area that I've got. If I go up 75 feet and I put a 10-inch brush, which we used to do, by the way, then your stability this way in that plane there is way less than if you put a 20-inch brush.
Okay.
Now the problem with 16 and 20 and 24 and 36 is obviously the amount of water that we need to get up there in order to have water coverage to make it worthwhile. Yeah. So that then introduces balancing between the fluid dynamics capability of the system that you're using and the stability of the pole on the glass, and ultimately the efficiency of saying, if I can put a bigger brush up there, sure, I'm going to have more friction against the glass, so you'll need more effort per stroke in the upstroke, not the downstroke. So you'll need marginally more effort in order to offset or counterbalance the effect of friction of more bristles on the glass, but each stroke is covering more territory. So therefore, you'll end up with less strokes. Yeah? Yeah. So as long as you can get the water up there, and that's where it pays to buy a booster pump or whatever you've got to put in line in order to make sure you've got loads of water. And then we're also we've just ordered a bunch of V11 Spring Europe pump controllers for the 12-volt pumps. So you can actually set the pressure on the ground, and basically the V11 delivers more amps the more resistance it experiences. So I'm sort of jumped across to fluid dynamics, but maybe we'll come back to it, make sure I come back to it and say, let's go over that one more time, yeah? From a stability point of view, the wider the brush, the more stable it is, especially when we have a gooseneck. So I'm going to cover that in a second. Okay, so you're good with that? The wider the brush, the more stable it is?
Yeah. And
especially if you get to a glass-clad building with no frames and you have to get to the edge on a windy day.
That's right.
Yes.
I understand that.
And I have dropped a pole off the side of a building, like at 6 stories. So I've done that. Yeah. So, and I was lucky actually. I learned how to not break a pole when it falls, when my one and only 6-story pole was falling. I'll tell you how I did it. I've got a little video. I did it in a car yard once. But basically, if you lose control of the pole and it's falling, your entire intention is that it lands flat. Now, obviously, if there's stairs or a garbage disposal bin or something, anything sharp, it's going to snap, right? It's going to snap over any point. However, if it is just landing in flat ground or bushes or whatever, then the idea is that as it's coming down to the end, just pull the handle up, right? So it's not falling like that. You're lifting the handle up so the last bit is a belly flop, right? That's the. There's a real tip from a seasoned pole dropper.
So the best thing is not to drop it.
Yes.
If it happens.
Yeah, but in these days, if you go back to when I was doing it, 2006, 2009, we were using not what were officially 9-inch V-cam truck brushes. So we're up 6 stories with a 9-inch brush, cleaning to the edge of a building with a responsibility to not leave a line of dirt down the edge. So it's
to rinse off the glass.
Yeah, well, in those days we'd actually tilt the brush. This is where you see these guys with a rotational torque. You know, they tilt the brush on the side and run the edge of the brush down the frame and squirt the water across, because you can't, it's 6 stories, you can't get it off the glass, you know.
No.
So also I want to talk with you about how to jump from frame to frame. So stability on the glass there, goosenecks. Let me talk to you about how to go over frames while I remember. We talked before about that when we accelerate, right, we cause flex. And normally, if we're just wanting to maintain a constant pressure of the brush against the glass, we want to reduce the flex so that the brush is behaving in a static way or a standard way. However, when we want to move a brush off the glass, if you accelerate, you push flex into the pole, and that flex will travel all the way up the pole. And when it gets to the top, the brush becomes lighter. So actually what I do is, you know, if that's my pole, I actually, you know, push it like that. And then by the time that gets to the top, the brush is starting to bounce off the glass, and then you can just lift it off the glass and take it across maybe 3 feet at a time.
Okay.
So you don't have to walk it with the effect of gravity. Basically, you're defying gravity by putting a bounce into the pole. And it takes a bit of practice, but you can't practice at 4 stories because the pole is too damn rigid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can only practice when it's up there. But that's the easiest way is, you know, just put a pulse into it. If you remember, like, you know, sending, or even your rhino tube, you want to get a kink out of it, you know, you'll send a flicker through it, right? And you'll get a sine curve going through all the way through to the end. Then it's the same logic as that, is that, you know, you've gone up, down, and then this up-down motion goes through the tube. Well, the same happens with a pole. So you're basically bouncing it and then waiting for that to get to the top, and then as it gets to the top, you're taking advantage of that to take it off the building and get over a frame. Or walk it across bricks. You know, it's much easier than trying to zigzag its way across a rough surface like bricks, or trying to, then you need, if you're going to try and walk it over a frame, then you're using the rotational torque to try and lift one edge of it up and stuff like that. And then the clamps are really, you know, stressed in their ability to grip the tube. Pardon me. Okay, so the bigger the brush, the more the coverage, the less work you'll do in as far as cycles, knowing that that it will have more friction. In order to overcome the friction, you will end up with more flex. Scientifically, you'll get more flex in the pole during acceleration, the more friction it has to overcome at the top. Yeah? It's not a lot, but it's better to cover it and say, for example, if you put a beast brush, a 20-inch beast, you'll get more friction because the beast kind of grips onto the glass. That's why it's a better, you know, agitator. But it also requires more effort. So it's not necessarily the best brush because you're going to use more effort when you may not need to, you know, for example. So, but it's worth remembering, okay, what am I dealing with, you know, and then adjusting your behavior accordingly. Goosenecks. So here's probably the most valuable piece of information. If you just have a side-to-side, you can use side-to-side up to 5 stories, there's no problems. But when you have a look at when we send you a 20-inch brush, we don't put a side-to-side on it, and that's because we imagine that your biggest use of it will be on a gooseneck, because you'll be going up high, right? So when somebody's bought a Pro or Pro-CISION. So the 20-inch can be screwed onto the brush, and onto the gooseneck, and oh no, let me go backwards. If you were using a side-to-side and you get flex, so the pole's here and you get flex, then as that flex goes up, that last, you know, section 2, section 3, section 2, section 1, or section 3, section 2, section 1, it can touch the glass as it's going up, right?
Okay.
So your intention is to take the pole off the glass. I mean, the only way, by the way, the only way to avoid any flex in a pole is to make it a modular pole, like where it's all, you know, a 1.5-inch round tube or a 2-inch round tube or something like that, you know. But then you've got to have this bundle of tubes that you've got to carry everywhere with you. But as long as there's telescopic poles, obviously you're going from a 2-inch diameter to a 1-inch diameter. There's an inherent weakness in the sense that the thinner sections are less rigid, you know, by the nature of their diameter. So in that sense is up to 5 stories. You can use side to side, there's no problem. And then once you start to see that the effort that you're applying is flexing the pole, or gravity is flexing the pole, or the nature of where you have to stand in relation to the glass is flexing the pole, you know, because it's nice for me to say, hey, stand at 70 degrees or 75 degrees, but what if there's landscaping there? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the building that we used to have our factory in, I mean, it was a 30-foot landscape, you know, so we have to be back 30 feet. There's no choice.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, that if you see that, then you should switch to the gooseneck. And what the gooseneck is the gooseneck displaces the pole. So if this is the glass here on the edge of the screen there, and instead of having the pole, you know, there, you're now displacing it. And then any flex that goes through, now the flex is happening, even if it is going past the vertical point, it's not going to touch the glass. Yeah?
Okay.
So one of the rules of the gooseneck is to displace the pole. However, obviously, as soon as you put a gooseneck on, you can't have a swivel, right? Because your fulcrum, you've now got this great big long leverage point, you know, working on this tiny little fulcrum point, and the pole will just go blink, blink, blink like that. So, so use side to side as long as you can, and then switch to gooseneck at the last minute, unless you have no choice but to where you want to set where you are in relation to the glass. So our heavy-duty gooseneck set, or the reach efficiency pack, is 4 angles, because in 99% of the cases, the glass is at 90 degrees to the ground, and the ground may be not at 90 degrees, but the windows are at 90 degrees.
Yeah.
So where you stand, like if you have to stand really close, then that angle at the top is more likely 90 degrees. Now, if you have to get back around landscape, then this angle here, you know, might be 145 degrees, and over 145 degrees it becomes inefficient. You know, so that's why we have 4 angles between 95 and 145 degrees. And so your intention is to choose the best angle for yourself. I got feedback now.
Okay.
So, and the second thing is, have you got background noise there?
Yeah, my wife, she's having the bath running.
Tell her to come out and say hello.
So we have a lot of pressure here.
There you do. That's amazing. That's funny. Okay. Well, let's have some background noise. That's good. It's not so loud. So, here's the thing, that if the pole, like if you're talking 7 stories, and this is where the integral parts come from, 6 and 7 stories, is that the angle, as the pole goes up, it becomes more and more likely to be vertical, right? The actual number 1 section of the pole in relation to the glass by the time you're back, you know, 15, 20 feet or something like that, yeah? So it'll just have a nice curve in it. And so therefore, if you put a 95 degree angle, it would support that. However, if you support that, you're kind of setting it like that, and so you're not doing anything else. So in my experience is you should take the 110 degree, the one just bigger, just wider than the 95, at 6 or 7 stories. And what that does is that it kicks the pole out a little bit. It tells the pole, you know, it's got 2 choices. You could think that it'll either tip the brush this way, or it'll kick the pole that way. And in my experience, it kicks the pole out. So it's just saying, hey, don't flex like this. Don't flex underneath. Yeah. If you're going to flex, it's still going to, you know, work the brush into its square position. Yeah. So that's my recommendation, and then you're just going to have to, you know, experience that yourself. The other alternate brush, just to cover it, is the large Unger Inlight. I'm not a fan of the Unger Inlight radial brush very often, but because it's got 3-inch bristles and not many of them, and it's a very wide block. It splays a lot. So at big heights, it's not a bad brush, you know, at 7 stories, and it's got about a third of, for the same width, it's got a third of the bristles. So it's a compromise. You know, with constructor, you know, we're aiming towards a single stroke up, single stroke down outcome to clean a window. And with an Unger, you might be looking, if you look at the videos online of guys using the Unger Inlight, they're talking 4, 5, 6 strokes of agitation.
Okay.
So there's a lack of efficiency in it, but there's so few bristles that they're looking to get it to self-clean, you know, that the dirt doesn't get caught up in it, like, you know, kind of thing. So, but what it does is give stability, you know, in a weird way, because the bristles are so splayed. It gives another form of stability. I'm not saying, you know, if you've got one, then I'd say, you know, try it and experience it, you know, and then work out when to use which brush at what times, blah, 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 yeah?
Okay.
I'm still a bigger fan of a wider brush giving you your real stability. But the radials, because the constructor brush is not a radial brush, it has a square face and it has some splay, you know, but the Unger has huge splay, right?
Okay. You're kind of lagging here.
Oh, okay, let's hit it and go again. Wait. All right. Is that better?
Okay.
What I've done is I've turned off all my apps that would download. You may have your mail program looking for an email, you know, so check Mail, Google, Safari, all the ones that are logging in all the time, and kill them.
Okay.
That's my experience on Skype.
Okay, that's looking better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. You're a fine looking man.
Okay.
Alright, so setting the gooseneck, start, if you're going to 6 and 7 stories, start with a 110 and get your experience on that. If you're further away from the building by nature of where you have to stand, then you want to pick up a bigger angle, because your intention is to keep the bristles square on the glass. Yeah?
Okay.
That's your intention. Yeah. So the higher you go, the more you'll see that the pole is becoming, the top section of the pole is more closer to parallel to the glass. So then, you know, my recommendation is you never take the 95-degree one because of that. Even though you see that, you don't take the 95-degree one because of that, because it doesn't work that way. I don't know. I mean, if I think about it, you think the flex, the effort is coming up the pole when you're coming from horizontal to vertical, and that in itself is, you know, basically kicking the brush back up, you know, at some point.
Yeah.
So, and it's the upstroke that you're worried about, not the downstroke. So that's my experience, is use the 110, the 110, unless you're seriously a long way away, and then you've got to play with it, you know, as to which one is the right one. But, so you can see the dynamics is that the Pro at 2 and 3 and 4 stories, or Pro-CISION, 5 stories is incredibly rigid, and then when you go to 6 and 7, it changes its behavior by nature of these things, right? And that's, the key is to know that. The other thing that I wanted, are you cool with all that so far?
If what?
Are you cool with everything so far?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, and thank goodness we're recording it, so you can, you know, you can get a rerun. I'll check. I am recording. I am. 41 minutes. Wow. Shit. So the other thing I want to talk with you about is wind. When you have the wind coming across from here, it will bow the pole that way, in theory, like fishing lines and stuff like that. Yeah. So it'll bow the pole that way, and the way to compensate that is to twist the pole into the wind, right? So you're basically corkscrewing it into the wind, and it straightens up. It's quite. I mean, you feel like a magician, yeah. But the pole basically corkscrews into the wind, and you see its shape, that bend coming out of it. And then with wind, the other one is to watch out for is to realize that what's happening on the ground is not happening up in the air necessarily the same. So you could have a wind coming across at 40 feet or 50 feet, especially over the top of a building, you know. So the higher you go, you may find the top of the pole, you know, being blown out. And I think you've already worked it out, but basically it's like if you imagine that guy who can carry the pen on his finger, you know, then when the pole goes to go this way, you have to go that way. When the pole goes to go, when the pole leans this way, you have to go this way. Yeah. So you're basically, you know, keeping it like that. Yeah. So that's the magic of, you know, keeping it on the glass. When you, for example, if you're wanting to walk the brush across the glass, you know, because you're doing your motion, then basically if I want to take, let me think if that's the brush, right? Let me just kill that light. Oh, maybe not. I think I can do this. There. If I block enough of it, it comes up. So if I'm wanting to walk that brush across the glass like this, yeah, then I'm actually going to, this is me down here, I'm going to step this way, you know, in a stroke, and then as I go on the upstroke, it'll, you know, so as I step this way, it'll naturally go that way.
Okay.
Right? So you're going to basically walk away in order to make it go that way.
Okay, so you might, instead of walking straight to the building, you will walk a little bit aside.
Yeah, on the upstroke. On the upstroke, you'll step aside and then basically angle the pole, and as you push it up, that effort will be transferred in a non-linear sense or a multiple vector sense, and make the brush go in the direction you want it to go.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if it's a wider brush. The wider the brush, the more resistance, the more you need to move to the side to get it to go up, and then when it comes down, you want it to come down straight for your rinse. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it ends up very intuitive. You don't even know you're doing it, but that's what's actually happening, you know, in order to make it happen.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
Flex. The flex is about gravity and acceleration. We've covered that. The wider the brush, the more stability you have on the glass, and the more coverage you have per stroke. If you're using full-length strokes in every sense, then you're going to get the most efficiency out of the pole and the rigidity of the pole. You know, you're not going to challenge the flexing loss of effort. And we're talking. This is only talking at, you know, mostly at 7 stories, but 6 and 7. You know. Then the only other issue that comes with that is again going back to the fluid dynamics, is to realize that you need water for every 10 feet of height. You have 5 psi of gravity that you have to overcome. So if you go up 70 feet, there's 35 psi loss. Yeah. Now you don't need a whole lot, but you know, the bigger the brush, the more jets. You know, from our philosophy. So then the more pressure you need. So the answer to it, because flow is a constant, and it's basically flow equals pressure times resistance. So if you've got a tube, then as soon as you put a resistance in here, right, and you want it to continue, that no matter where in the tube it is, that when there's resistance, the pressure builds up behind the resistance and increases the velocity of the water through the resistance. Yeah. So that's how a venturi works. A venturi is basically a crimping of the line, you know, so that the water increases its speed. As it increases its speed, it has the ability to suck another liquid in and then continue it on, right? So, so when you look at your whole system, what you'd be looking to do when you're doing 6 and 7 stories is to reduce. Yeah, remind her that she's on camera. I can always edit. So you want to reduce any resistance in your line in order to maximize the pressure that's passed on to the brush. Yeah. So the frictions that you're looking at is any right angles and things like that. Any hose still on a reel. You know, run it off the reel, even if it's just, you know, meandering around, it doesn't matter, but get it off the reel because that's got circumferential. Like water wants to go straight and you're telling it to hit the wall and go around, hit the wall and go around, right? So there's friction inside a reel. Then if you look at your town supply water, when water comes out of your lake, it's in a huge pipe, right? By the time it gets delivered to your house, it's in a small pipe, right? So it appears like there's loads of pressure, you know, but it's just well managed that they haven't lost the pressure on the way through. Once you lose pressure through a resistance, you no longer have that pressure available. So we're quite okay stepping down from a hose to a tube, right? If the tube is too long, then it's kind of like a loss of pressure for no good reason. But when you're going up to 7 stories, you've got no choice but to have a long tube, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be dragging, in your hose management, you don't want to be dragging a hose around at the bottom of the pole. You still need, you know, 30, 40 feet of tube outside the pole in order to give you a reasonable working zone before you start dragging hose around.
Yeah.
Yeah? So you need 100 feet of rhino tube anyway, but we sent you 150 feet, you could easily cut 50 feet off that and use that as a second tube, yeah?
Yeah.
So what pure water system are you using? Just DI?
Yep. Yeah, just DI.
Okay, so I say RO for low, DI for high. DI doesn't take very much pressure at all. So if you've got great tap pressure, then there's no loss of pressure through your water filter. If you ever hit low water pressure, then you could go to something like Tractor Supplies. I don't know what the Canadian equivalent of it is, but basically buy an ATV chemical spray tank with a 40 to 60 psi pump on it. You know, maybe 60. You probably need 60. And then they're like $150 or $200 Canadian. And then you'd have a little buffer tank. So you'd fill the buffer tank, you know, with your low pressure environment water, you know, DI water, and then let the pump deliver the psi to the pole. Yeah, but I don't imagine that happening.
Well, I have a 12-volt pump and 3 barrels in my truck, so
great. Right.
50. Yeah.
Right. You're ready to rock and roll.
With that.
But that's okay. So if you hit low water pressure or impossible access, you know, to taps, then that's the answer to that. And then the more pressure you can supply to your system, the bigger the brush, the more jets you can have, the less strokes you'll need in order to achieve the task. Yeah. So your second phase, once you get used to using the pole, then your second phase would be say, okay, how do I get more water up there so that I can just use less strokes?
Okay.
Because you may be limited to a 16-inch brush in certain situations by the nature of, you know, the water supply, the pressure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah?
What is the maximum pressure in a rhino tube?
Rhino tube can handle 100 psi of pressure, but it's unlikely that it would ever do that unless somebody's hooking it straight up to the pump, you know. So because it's at the end of the fluid system, it's usually there's already a reasonable pressure loss across the system before it gets to the rhino tube. But yeah, you got no problems with that. You can crank it up.
Okay.
What else? That's a headful, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a headful.
Yeah. Okay, so what is the angle that we want to be? It's 110 degrees. Then
110 on the gooseneck. If that's at 7 stories. At 6 stories, it may be 110. At 5 stories, you could go back to the side to side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So you're gonna look at it once it gets. It's a pain in the bum, working it out yourself, because it all changes in relation to where are you in relation to the glass. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what's actually driving it. So there's no correct answer. Ideally, you're going to be at 75 degrees, kind of to the glass, and then you could say, okay, 110 in the ideal condition. Yeah.
Okay.
But if you end up somewhere else, then it's going to change. And what you're doing is you're looking at that brush to see in the upstroke, is it square? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got the maximum agitation. Yeah.
Good. Well,
I think that's it. That's a lot of talking.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of videos too, so I already looked at most of them. So.
Yeah, but I've never recorded this one, so I'm pretty. Even though it's a kind of like a soliloquy, it's a lot of information. But I'm glad I've recorded it so that I can push it up, both for you and for other customers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the other one is that people say, "How do you know it's clean?" Right? You hear that one, right? So the answer is you can always go inside and check. We do know guys who have had spotters on the inside when they're particularly concerned. But normally commercial buildings, the property manager's not so concerned. Like, he's not looking for residential quality of clean. Not that I'm saying that it doesn't clean to the residential quality, but it's not on his agenda to be so picky, to run around 1,000 pieces of glass and look for a spot.
Yeah.
So, but the real answer is that if you train yourself nose to glass with a water-fed brush, it's the brush that cleans the glass, right? That's the tool. And if you would never teach somebody a squeegee on a pole, so why do we teach water-fed on a pole, right? So the secret is, pull the number 1 section out or have a nose to glass, and then watch that brush, do its thing, understand how many agitations it needs, get confident that that's all it needs, have a look at its overlap motions when you go through certain motions, do the maths of how that brush is covering the glass, then put it on a pole, then follow the maths. Because if you were satisfied at ground level from this technique, you're going to be satisfied at 7 stories from that technique. That's 100% the answer. It's maths and physics, right? We're disturbing something off the glass into solution and then removing that dirty solution in one way or another. In our case, we're doing it with a water squeegee, right? But in another guy would be doing it with a squeegee or on a rope, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. And for the bristles, what is the best combination? The one that I receive, like with it's the black and like the hand cap with the white ones. Is it the best to clean that high, or is there any?
I believe that's our best brush. I mean, that's the one we keep fiddling with, as we get different ideas from customers and stuff like that. So that we call that one the original. We should call it the all-rounder. I think we might change its name this year, but it's the best. It's a triple trim synthetic brush. It's got the end cap bristles are a higher grade nylon. They're actually a toothbrush bristle, right? So they're higher grade nylon bristle, so that they don't wear out as much. We had one bad batch of bristles somewhere in our history, but so to avoid that, we've gone back to clear bristles and nylon and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's the best brush. And the only other one is that if you find that you're finding it difficult or frustrating keeping that brush square on the glass for any reason, then I would recommend you to go back to the Unger Inlight radial.
Okay.
But you'll work slower, so that's not really the goal, but it's an honest answer. It's an honest answer for a situation, yeah.
Okay. Good. And I saw some guys like Paul-André Boucher that is cleaning through the screens. Is there any special setup to go with?
I do not have any experience. We always took off screens.
Okay.
I don't know. I do not know. I just don't get that, because the dirt settles behind the screens because the wind and the rain don't get to the glass, right? Or the wind might, but the rain doesn't. You know, the screen basically catches the rain. So screens are fantastic to make windows dirty, but the screen itself is dirty as well. So, you know, not getting contact with the glass and pushing dirty water through the screen, you know, like, if guys have been able to work it out, we should be drilling down on that online.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Asking more questions. How does that work?
Yeah, well.
Because you've got no agitation, right? You've got no agitation on the glass. So how did you disturb the dirt off the glass?
Well, except if you put pressure on the screen and then you can reach a little bit of glass.
Yeah, but I accept that one. But when you get a screen that's that soft that you can put pressure on it and it will touch the glass, that thing's gonna stick to the glass with the water. Like, it's not gonna pop back off the glass. The water surface tension of the water holds it there, and then you got to wait for it to dry, and then, oh my God, I'm not sold on that. I'm a screen remover.
Yeah. Okay.
But I can imagine the guy who's pressure washing. I can imagine him being able to blast the glass through the screen and blast the screen, then go back with a pure water rinse. He may be able to pull that off. You know, that maybe makes sense, but not at heights.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right, so
I guess
I think that's all my knowledge transferred to you.
that's good. Well, we will look at it again, and have any question, you're always available for all days.
Yeah.
So.
Day and night, till I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah, but for your my night, so it's kind of all the time. Yeah. You're often awake late, so it's kind of. I don't know where you're sleeping.
Not so much. Like John and I just try and pick up 4 or 5 hours a night. That does us. So, yeah, it's exciting, right? If you're excited about something, then you don't. You know, sleep is. I think sleep is resignation. You know, I know some people need sleep. I'm not trying to argue with them, but in my life, when I feel like I need to sleep a lot, then I'm really resigning. I'm not facing my life, right? I'm just resigning. So I like it when I'm passionate and pushing the line. But I do, because you know we've both got a bit of grey hair. One of the things I do is if I'm fatigued unusually, I always stop.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I've learned that because fatigue can give you a heart attack more than your body mass or your. There's a whole lot of things less than fatigue. You know that fatigue is really high. If you really have some virus in your blood or something like that, and you feel completely drained, then that's the time to stop. You know.
Yeah, that's a little bit why I'm going into window cleaning more than regular floor cleaning.
Oh, that's your background, right? Oh yeah, that's hard work.
Yeah.
And all nighttime work, right? All nighttime work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's the point.
Good. Well, welcome to the wonderful world of window cleaning.
Yeah.
and thank you for choosing Reacher. We appreciate it.
Oh, it seems like the best product that I could found, and a lot of supports. That's something really important.
Yeah,
especially when you're starting.
Yeah, I think it makes sense that, like, if you look at the iPhone had its own place, for forever. And then, one by one, everybody realizes, oh my God, the iPhone is so right, and everything will gravitate. In the end, everything will gravitate back to the same design. Like, whether it's ours or whether somebody else comes up with a better design and then we move towards it or whatever. So everything's going to gravitate to be the same. So the reason why people would buy my brand over somebody else's brand is not going to be the product. It's going to be the support, it's going to be the accessories, it's going to be the community, it's going to be the training. It's going to be like we're starting now to tap into how do we help advertise that you're a Reach It user, and that your potential customers should choose you because you have Reach It. You know, we want to go that way. So we're continually working out how to support you as a customer to benefit your understanding as to why you're our customer.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So,
All right, buddy. What are we up to? 1 hour and 2 minutes. Let's cut this thing.
yeah.